During these weeks, we are dealing with a Bible study in a sense that we're kind of going to class. So let's think of it in that sense, where we have a different kind of receptivity and responsiveness in our reactions. We're continuing with the study of the Genesis account of the first 7 days of creation, which we're seeing as 7 steps in the creative process. I'm sure that most of us have been conditioned to the idea of a personal responsibility to read the Bible. If you had any early religious training, you probably were, it was emphasized to you that you should read the Bible. It's important. Many have tried to read the Bible and have given up because you just can't quite get past the these and the thous and the begets and all the various other confusions. But you may harbor a secret sense of guilt about this. Many who do read the Bible faithfully take it very literally without knowing its inner meaning, and thus quite likely miss the important meaning of the Scriptures. When I was a youngster, I had 2 close friends who lived next door. It was a Baptist minister's family. And one night, these 2 boys were, as they say, sleeping over at my place. Before going to bed, they both had to dutifully read the Bible. They were required to read 2 chapters each night. So one would read and then the other would read. I sat there listening, not knowing the slightest thing what they were saying. When they threw, I said, "What does it mean?" And one boy said, "Who knows? You just read it. It's good for you." One of the problems is that the Bible was never intended to be history, though it does contain some historical facts. It is not biography, though it traces some lives from cradle to grave. Paul certainly knew that it had something more, because when telling the story of Abraham, he added, "which things are an allegory." Now, Webster defines allegory as the description of one thing under the image of another. And the creation story, more so than any other aspect of the Bible, is an allegory. It is not looking back to something that happened way back then, at the beginning of the creation of the world, that thus is over and done with. It deals with a process, with a continuum. The first 4 words of the Bible, which we've reiterated over and over, Bresheth Elohim, in the beginning God. This means the beginning not in order of time, not back there when something was done, but the beginning in terms of the foundation, the ground. In the beginning God literally means in principle God, in principle. We're not dealing with a capricious person who molded things together and set it off and said, this is the thing I've done. We're dealing with a principle and a process and a continuum, that which is integral within the life of every person. The creative process, described symbolically in Genesis, is a universal process that worked in the evolution of the universe, though not in the time frame we've assumed. But also, and importantly, it works in every creative activity that has ever emerged, and it can work for you right now. So we're interested in getting to understand this creative process so that we can apply it right now today in our work, in our creative activities. Remember, you are created in and of God. You are a unique individualization of God. Thus, creativity is not something that acts on you from the outside. It is the divine process within you. We sometimes say, I wish I were creative. Everyone is creative. It's the nature of God to create. It's the nature of every person to be creative. And as Rollo May says, the creative person is the fully functioning person. Let's again review the process thus far. At the expense of being somewhat tedious, we want to keep going over this so that we can put it all together in context in one continuum. The first words, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, indicates that all things come out of the principle of the allness of God, the creative flow. In the first movement, let there be light. We've emphasized that this is what we call primal illumination. It doesn't mean that the sun came on, or that lights were outside of us that we could see, something that could lighten our way. We're talking about light in the sense of enlightenment. And we use the illustration of seeing a great fiery orb off in the distance coming closer toward you, and you look into it. It comes closer and gets larger and larger and larger as you come closer. till eventually it envelops the whole sky, and you look right into it, and you go right through it and out the other side. Now you don't see the light anymore, but all is light. You see from enlightenment. You see from light. Light is not that which you see, but from which you see. It is an enlightened awareness. This is the first step. Let there be light. The second movement, the second day, let there be firmament. We used to think the firmament was the overarching canopy of the sky, from which God hung stars and suns and so forth like lights on a stage. But this firmament refers to the birth of faith, not believing in something, but just a believing awareness, a faith factor. We talk about it as creative perception. We said that, in a sense, it's like walking into a pantry where the shelves are filled with all sorts of foodstuffs and condiments, and you see them not as they are in their periods, individual expressions and ideas, but you see it as one possibility of a giant cookbook. And you see it specifically in terms of a recipe to bake a cake or to make a souffle or simply to cook beans, whatever. But somehow you see all this as a continuum, and you see from a perspective that sees possibilities. You see things not as they are, but as they can be. This is the firmament consciousness. In the third movement, let the dry land appear. The waters part and the dry land emerges. This is the mental image of formed thoughts. It's the first beginning in the consciousness of a plan, of an idea, of a thought. I think I'll do that. Perhaps I think I'll write a cookbook. I see that as a possibility. And the dry land appears, and I can actually see it coming into form in consciousness. Remember, this dry land image is coming out of the seas of infinite mind within. It's not putting something into your mind, something coming out of the process as it unfolds. It's important that we get this aspect when we think of the creative process. It's something that unfolds from within. This is the thing that's lacking so often in works that are made by people. The person who's really creative is one who's not following patterns or designs from the outside, but he's letting the inner intuitive process work, letting it unfold from within. So we talk about this as the imaging or the I-amaging factor of mind, the third movement. The fourth movement that we talked about last week, God made two great lights, which we see as being the sun and the moon. And Fillmore talks about this as the understanding and the will. So even as the dry land appears within the waters, the image comes forth out of the waters, and the image comes out of our own superconscious mind. So we need to let the intuition reveal understanding about it. That which the mind can imagine, it can unfold the understanding of. And with the sun of understanding comes the moon of the will to go forward. So you have this image of a cookbook in consciousness. Then suddenly out of this comes the sun, the understanding of how you can go about it, how you can actually produce the cookbook, how you can put together the recipes and so forth. And then the moon, which is the will, the drive, the persistence to go forward and accomplish it. And when we get the sun and the moon together, the I can and the I will, then we open the way for the fifth movement of mind, which we're going to deal with today, which is an exciting thing. In Genesis 1, 20 through 23, and God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created the sea monsters and every living creature that moveth, wherewith the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. This is highly symbolical. Again, a hieroglyph, if you will. It has a deeper meaning than that which appears. Keep in mind that we're not dealing with any outward evolution. As we will point out again next week and the week after, as we bring this series to a close. When the first 7 days of creation are over, getting into the second chapter of Genesis, even though the man was created on the sixth day, we'll deal with that next week, after the 7 days of creation, it says, and there was no man to till the ground. You've just created man on the sixth day, but there's no man to till the ground. It's a very important realization. The 7 steps deal with the involutionary creation. It's the process unfolding in mind. When you come to the 7 days, you still don't have anything on paper. You don't have anything built. You don't have any cookbook. You don't have any recipes or any cakes. But you have the image in consciousness, the whole thing completed, and then you're ready to go. You have the inspiration. So this is dealing with an involutionary creation. Remember, the dry land image appears, a goal or a sense of a direction, even a specific picture or image in mind. Then comes the light of the sun, the understanding of how to do it, in the context of, I can see that. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know how I'm going to do it. It's akin to the light bulb glowing over the head of a person as the funny people use it to indicate the, aha, the light bulb shining, remember? Aha, now I see. This is only partway along the path of fulfillment. The I can must lead to the I will. And most projects fall down because they fail in this matter of will, the will to do, to actually do it. It's not hard to get a desire to write a cookbook, or to write a book of any kind, or to paint a picture, or take a course of study, or build an engine. We all have fantasies of that sort of thing. We lack the will to carry it forward. The will is the driving force in life. However, the will must be trained to act with understanding, because when the will acts on its own, it becomes emotional and willful. I'm going to do this thing if it kills me. I'm going to drive through and heaven help anybody that stands in my way. So it has to mature into a kind of willingness, a letting go. It must be noted that Genesis symbolically has God saying, let there be. Not I command there to be, but let there be. It's entirely different things. See, it's a willingness, a giving way. No suggestion of effort, no strain, just let. An important insight into the creative flow in the individual is that guidance is not a once and for all flash of light. It is a continuum. Emerson says guidance is the continuation of the divine effort that made you in the first place. So there's a need for the discipline to keep listening, to keep open. We sometimes say, I'm going to ask God for guidance. We kind of expect to have a flash say to you, this is the way to go, do this thing. Guidance normally doesn't work that way. Guidance is a continuum, it's a principle. It's a fundamental activity of the divine process within you. When you believe this, and you say, let there be, and you move, and the guidance process then directs your hands and your footsteps in the way that you should go. And it comes through your consciousness, through your own awareness. So this fifth step in the creative process is the unfolding of swarms of living creatures, like the fish in the sea and the birds in the air and so forth. These represent the myriad of supportive ideas, symbolically the development of discrimination and good judgment. The more the ideas, the greater the need to separate them, to discriminate, to select. And this is another point where persons often lose their way. Because when you decide you're going to do something, you find your mind teeming with ideas. You get confused by them. Ideas coming out of the blue, everything. Your mind is filled with all these ideas. What do you do with them? Tendency to say, well, I block them out, and I concentrate on what I'm going to do. This is to miss the whole mark. Because the mind is a whole mechanism, a whole system, a whole continuum. It works in total. So the ideas that are swarming in conscious, even though they seem confusing, they all have a part to play in this process that you're going to unfold, this technique that you're going to express, this thing you're going to do. But they have to be organized. There must be the willingness to let the swarm in the consciousness. Let's think about that a little bit. Because when the aha flashes as a light bulb over the head, there's this immediate onrush of ideas which are intended to support, but which, without discrimination, serve only to confuse. So not understanding how the creative process works in mind, and out of fear and intellectual laziness, we do many things to protect ourselves from the swarms, to get it out of our consciousness so that we can concentrate on something. And these are things very, very subtle, but very important. One thing is to keep ourselves in the shallows. Jesus tells the fishermen disciples one time when they said they'd fished all night and caught nothing, he said, put out into the deep and let down your nets for a graft. You're not going to get many ideas in the shoals of superficiality. So one of the ways you can protect yourself from the swarms of ideas, these supportive ideas that are there to help you, to protect yourself from them, is to engage in conversation on trivia, to escape into bland entertainment, such as flipping on the television, listening to anything just to keep you from thinking, filling your life with busyness as an excuse for not taking time to enter the deeps of mind where the swarms hover. Another protective device of human thinking is prejudging or prejudice. This is a willful insistence that the dry land image is predetermined. This is the cookbook, this is the way it's going to be, and you have it fixed in your consciousness. You don't let the thing evolve and unfold and be blessed by these supportive ideas. And so any new ideas that come are quickly rejected out of hand. It has been said that prejudice is a vagrant opinion with no visible means of support. Certainly it's a lazy man's substitute for thinking. It's a great time saver because you may form opinions without bothering to get the facts. As one woman said, I never listen to the facts for they only confuse me. I want to make up my own mind. We laugh at that, but quite often this is the way we function. Most persons do not hold opinions. They're merely held by them and enslaved with certain prejudiced ideas. Prejudice is a result of lack of true understanding. As someone once said, you're apt to be down on what you're not up on. So we want to remember that we live in mind. All things begin in mind, in this infinite sea of intelligence in which we live. It's a constant and ever-present resource. Whatever the need, we're ever in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy from which all things proceed. But remember, as the dry land image gives rise to understanding and the will to continue, so the swarms of supportive ideas gives rise to the discrimination and the good judgment to rightly use them. Another human protective device is procrastination. We don't respect our own judgment. We're confused by these swarms of ideas. Subconsciously, we don't feel that we can carry out the plan. And we're afraid to meet with failure that we fear would result if we continued. So unconsciously, we stop short and then find all the many reasons why we don't have time, why we don't have enough money, why I don't have a good enough job, or I don't have a job at all, or because my family is too much of a drain on my strength, and all these things, etc., etc. There's a key in the fifth word, in the fifth day of the Genesis account, a key word, which I love. Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures. The word swarm does not connote confusion, but rather a kind of loose organization. And a good example of that is a swarm of bees in the beehive. Note how all the bees somehow seem almost obsessively involved in this one project. Their whole life, their whole motivation, their whole direction is toward supporting the queen and keeping this hive. They may go off in directions collecting honey. They may stay at home and do their work as the drones do. Each bee has its own place, but all are involved in this one thing, nothing else. A bee never goes off by itself and does something, unless he's crazed or dazed or something, but they're all involved in the hive. This is a swarming process, and it's a very important thing to see. A strong purpose or a plan in consciousness will tend to attract to itself a myriad, a swarm of ideas. And it's important that we see this and let the swarm take place. Have faith in the process. In other words, implicit within a creative idea is a coordinating factor which controls the inevitable swarms. And our need is to be patient, let the swarming take place. For instance, many of us have dreams and have been puzzled over dreams. And we ask sometimes, what does that dream mean? And there are many insights in psychology and metaphysics which work with the dream interpretation to help you to interpret your dreams in certain ways. Personally, I have little patience with dream interpretation techniques. Not that I reject them as valuable tools for some persons, but I just say for me, I'm too impatient to spend time every day raking through the embers of previous night's nocturnal fantasies to try to find out what they mean. So my approach to this is I simply make it known in quietness to my superconscious mind. All right, if you have something to say it when I'm awake. I'm listening. I do this especially if I have some sort of a puzzling dream. Instead of pouring to the dream and try to figure out all the symbols and the interpretation of the thing, I'm ready. Okay, God, let me have it. Right between the eyes, I'm ready. It's my feeling that the reason for dreams is an unconscious rejection of the swarms of ideas that come into consciousness. And so they try to steal into our minds in the dark of night, as it were, coming in the back door. But I say, here I am standing at the front door. Come and get me. I'm ready. So you see, the need is to be patient, to let the swarming take place. Let a sense of pattern come into being. So often we're overwhelmed by rampaging riots of undisciplined squads of mind, or emotion, as one writer puts it. So we either get on one horse and ride off in all directions, or we sit in the maze and do nothing. Now, implicit in the idea of the swarm is this natural tendency to form an integrally supportive group. To really get the picture of the swarm, another illustration, note a gaggle of geese. That's an interesting word, isn't it? Gaggle. I don't know who dreamed it up, but a gaggle of geese flying in formation. You see them moving across the sky in one pattern. Or perhaps a small flock of birds, little swallows or whatever they are. You see them moving around, flying up and down, around all over the sky, but one pattern, one whole, no one bird going off on his own. Every one almost as if their wings are wired together, and yet each one is flying separately. Or you see this with a school of fish. You see the schools move around up and down, almost impossible to figure out how they accomplish this. Researchers have been trying for ages to try to understand what it is, how they communicate, how they can tell one another. Planes have to fly for years together to learn how to fly in squadrons and in formations, and usually just 3 or 4 or 5, but here you have sometimes 50 or 100 fish or birds moving around together. What happens? How does it work? The new biology is now beginning to speculate on the possibility that in some mystical way these creatures are willing to lock themselves in, locked in, to a group process. So they have no identity of themselves while they're involved in this swarming process. They move as a body, and there's a superintelligence or a soul of the group that directs the group and directs the movement of the body. Something that's material, it's a non-material force. But suddenly they become one, and are one individual unit with many integral parts. This is the swarming process. I think it's important to see that this same process works within us. And one of the ways that the secret of the swarm works dramatically is in the interaction of 2 or more people in a sharing time of prayer or discussion. This is another way in which it works beautifully. We've probably all experienced it and not been aware of what happens. Jesus suggests the process when he says, "If 2 or more of you shall agree on earth as touching anything, it shall be done for them." 2 people who, in a sense, lock themselves in consciousness in a common purpose and share in this supportive realization. Suddenly they begin to interact as one mind. This is the brainstorming concept, the idea that comes out of a sharing in a loving, supportive context. This involves the secret of the swarm, letting go of the personal ego, not giving yourself up totally and becoming a nobody, letting your ego be lost or let go of for a while you let yourself become a part of a group consciousness and let a transcendent intelligence take over. This is a process that we use, and some of you have been involved in it, in our retreats. We're having this session right now in Holiday Hills. We work in small groups, and we work in the awareness that a transcendent force is in charge with the group process, so that we have group leaders that we work with. We carefully train them. Sometimes they pull it off, and sometimes they still have a hard time keeping the ego out of the way. But we train the leader to get the feeling and to project this consciousness to the group. But he's not a leader. He's not a director. He's not an authority figure. He's not a teacher. He's a part of the group. He just becomes a channel for the swarming process so that he, as a host, kind of directs them and keeps them moving in a kind of direction. But the group itself takes over. The group unfolds its own consciousness. And the group's soul is very much a part of this process. So that, in a sense, something in the group, an intelligence beyond any person, a greater than persons, an intelligence takes over, which becomes the directive force, which knows the needs of the persons in the group and becomes the means by which those needs are fulfilled. And the discussion that comes through people fills the needs. So that in the end, there's a tremendous sense of closeness and a feeling that something wonderful has happened. And specifically, wonderful ideas have come in consciousness out of this swarming realization. In a very real sense, that happens here on Sunday. You may not be aware of it. I always suggest this idea that you come to give something of yourself and you receive something from it, but it becomes a whole pool of consciousness that is sustained here. In our unity of purpose, something amazing takes place. People often say, "How did you know my need? You were talking right to me. You said to me today just exactly what I want. How did you know?" Well, the fact is, in the unity of consciousness, this whole process is involved. There's an intelligence, a soul force here. I am simply used by this. All of us used by it. The musicians are used by it. You are used by it. And your receptivity is just as important as the creative expression. I often say when you go to an art gallery, it's just as important to have creative viewers of art or creative listeners to music as it is to have the symphonic composer or the person who creates the art. It's a whole continuum. It's one whole process. So you become a part of that process, and somehow during the hour here, something happens in consciousness. We always pray that it will, and then many folks indicate to us that it has happened. So we're talking about the things that we often do unconsciously in this process to protect ourselves from the swarm. Another protective device is a subconscious self-induced abortion of good ideas or dry land images. In other words, we have something we're going to do, we talk it to death. We tell everybody about it. We can't hardly wait till we get home and tell them, I'm going to do this, I'm going to create a book, I'm going to write a symphony, I'm going to make this painting, I'm going to build this engine, I'm going to do this and this and this, and it's going to do such and so. And by the time we get around to do it, it's all gone. We've all done that time and time again. Jesus said, "See thou tell no man." See thou tell no man. Or the idea may die aborning. It's a universal law of nature that the unborn child is protected from all contact with the world. In fact, this is the real function of motherhood. So the inspiration that comes to you and the supportive ideas that flow and swarm around it, this is your child. You're its mother. Nature intends that you should protect and nourish the ideas in secrecy and shelter. You may say, does that mean I shouldn't talk about my plan with anyone? Of course you should. Because again, it's important to have a group, some that you can have feedback with and share your ideas with and have a supportive love from. But this is where discrimination and judgment comes in. We should consult or share with about our idea only those who will be supportive, which means who will be non-judgmental, who will not say, that would never work. The person is out of sync immediately. The whole process is aborted. A group that will keep open to become a part of a creative swarming. For instance, think about the idea of public prayer, which is used so often. So often, maybe a great figure, perhaps even the president of the country, will say, let's all have a day of prayer for peace, or a day of prayer for this or that or the other. In a group like this, suppose I would say to you, someone we all know, like John Jones. We all know John Jones. He's a very nice guy, and we've known him for a long time. He's been a part of our group. So I'll say, I want you all to pray with me today for John Jones. He's having a very serious physical problem. If in the group someone says, isn't that awful? Isn't that awful? The whole process is aborted. This is why public prayer is very precarious. Because if you have a group that's going to have an effective conscience of prayer, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, Jesus says, in the consciousness of the oneness of God, in the realization of the divine presence that's working through us all, and the willingness to let the ego go, let judgment be sustained, and just be a part of the swarming and the supportive love. So it's much better to have a group of 2 people, or 3 or 4, than it is to have a whole group like this. If this whole group could get into the swarming consciousness, everyone let go of judgments, and just become a part of the supportive love, and we'd have a tremendous power. But there's always that danger, you see, that someone may not be willing to swarm. So often we may devote energy trying to convince a person of our ideas or plans. Jesus said, give not that which is holy unto dogs, neither cast your pearls before swine, lest haply they trample them under their feet and turn and rend you. He's not talking negatively about a person calling people dogs. The word cynic comes from the Greek word that means dog. So Jesus is using classic figure of speech. He's not judgmentally calling narrow people canines or swine. He's simply saying, don't waste your time trying to present the truth to the cynical person. He won't understand it, and he will only tear your arguments to shreds. How many of us try this? We take truth out like carrying pamphlets out on the sidewalk to people as we pass, going out into the world and letting everybody know how wonderful truth is, and getting angry because they don't accept it. There's a thought that is very important about this. You can never reason a person out of something that he was not reasoned into in the first place. People who accept an emotional aspect of religion, perhaps like a fundamentalist Christian. I say this not judgmentally, but there are people who have this particular approach to life, very one-centered, narrow, one-faceted. But he accepts it emotionally. He's accepted, such as the phrase, the love of Jesus Christ. He's accepted the salvation of Jesus Christ. He's accepted emotionally. There's no way to reason him out of it, because he wasn't reasoned into it in the first place. So the important thing is, let them go. Often when someone is working so hard to convince someone of their idea, it may be because he's not really convinced himself. So the need is to get back to the beginning. Breshith Elohim, the foundation, the fundamental, that we all live in mind. And the mind teems with supportive and developmental ideas. But as Jesus says, we must put out into the deep, get out of the shallows. Now let's just suppose that your creative project or your dryland image involves, again, the cookbook, or writing a thesis, or composing a symphony, or creating a play. The dryland image gives rise to the understanding, which is the feeling of, yes, this is the way I go about it, and the will, the understanding, the persistence and the faith and the willingness to go forward. Obviously, the developing of the project is going to call for teams of ideas that swarm in and form a pattern that reflects the basic theme. How do you get the creative juices flowing? How do you stimulate the flow of these ideas, these supportive ideas, these swarms of fish, swarms of birds, in a sense, symbolically? You can effectively apply the meditation technique that we're unfolding in this study. Breshith Elohim, affirm that you're one with the mind of the infinite in which all ideas exist. Let there be light, enlightenment, so you feel a sense of seeing all things in the consciousness of light. Let there be a firmament, the faith to see possibilities, see that which can be, not just that which is. Let the dry land appear, the plan of the project unfold in mind. Let the sun and the moon appear, the understanding of how to do the thing and the will to commence. And then let there be swarms of living creatures. Let the mind be open to teams of supportive ideas with discrimination and good judgment to select the best and form them into a creative plan. Now, there's a system that I've used often, and many folks have followed this same thing. It's nothing new. It's a very important aspect of how the mind works. Take a pen in hand and a pad of paper, or perhaps if you think through the typewriter as I do, sit before a typewriter. Or perhaps as the poet says, not the poet, the songwriter, seated one day at the organ, I was weary and ill at ease, and my fingers wandered idly over the keys. You sit before the piano or the organ. Sit before whatever may be the media that's used in creation. And then let your fingers wander idly over the keys. Let your hand begin to write. But what am I going to write about? Don't worry about what to write about. Just write. And as you put one idea on paper, one idea engenders another. As you keep on writing, you may find that you'll write or type or play gibberish for a while. But gradually it will begin to show a pattern. And the mind will begin to swarm with swarms of living creatures. Because this is the way mind works. We're all creative creatures. The reason we don't act in a creative way is because we haven't had faith in it. We haven't used our mind in the proper way. Believe that the mind is a creative function. That there are answers galore to do the thing you want to do. Let it work. Believe it. Have patience in it. So you begin to type, or you begin to write, or you begin to play the piano and progress chords, and suddenly something begins to happen. An idea begins to take shape, and go with it. And suddenly you'll find teams of ideas. You'll find chapter from chapter in the book unfold, and ideas and progressions of music and chords and melodies and colors and all the various things that happen in creative things all begin to flow and fall in their natural place because they begin to swarm. And out of the swarm will come a wail of an idea. Or as the songwriter puts it, suddenly my fingers wandering over the keys, there appeared one great chord as a great amen, he says. God doesn't do things halfway. It is impossible that a plan can unfold in your mind without there being the knowledge of how it can be completed, the will to go on and persistently achieve it, and the teams of supportive ideas with which to work toward the end result. There's never a halfway process. We may accept it halfway, and we normally do. But if we'll be patient and let the mind work, it will go all the way. So get the thought in mind of the secret of the swarm. Apply it as best you can in your own experience. Think about it. Work with it. See what it does for you. In the conviction of the swarming of ideas in your mind to unfold a supportive flow of creativity. And also of the transcendent force that you can enjoy as you willingly enter into a group consciousness in a positive sharing experience. I call this Sunday meeting an experience in creative worship because our goal is to help you to experience a greater sense of personal worthiness. The advantages of regular involvement in such an experience are many. You make a periodically renewed commitment to the inner self. You send your mind to school to be stimulated by new concepts designed to help you to know yourself and progressively release your inner splendor. But there's always something more. It is the added thing that we're talking about, the mystery of the swarm. When you become a part of a group consciousness, which knows your needs and reveals answers in a powerful way. As we say in our retreats, trust the process. Trust the process. And if you give yourself willingly to the group consciousness, then what happens here will be of a transcendent nature. Then my words or Olga's meditation or the music of Steve and Paul all become as a background music to the mystic process that's taking place in you. And that's what it's all about. And some may ask you this afternoon or any time after you've been at a meeting like this, what happened at Unity this morning? You may respond, I really don't know, but somehow I feel better because of it. You could recite verbatim what was expressed here. You could even play a tape recording of the hour and still not catch it all. As I say often, learning is what remains when you have forgotten all that you've heard. Something wonderful is taking place. And if you willingly give yourself to it and completely trust this process, you'll experience something life-enriching. So when next you see a flock of birds or a gaggle of geese or a school of fish or a hive of bees moving as if they're in one body around one central idea, just remember the mystery of the swarm, a process that is working creatively in you all the time. Next week, the sixth day of the series is the creation of man, symbolic of the intuitive awareness of a perfect plan. And the following week, the creative Sabbath, symbolic of the incubation period. What we've been doing at the close of our hour is having a meditation time. We've been humming and using the hum as a background, and then into this energy force, I simply suggest some of the ideas of the creative unfoldment, and then we experience a flow of this. So the interesting thing I'd like to mention, I discovered that the word hum, you may have known it, I never knew it. The word hum comes from the Sanskrit word literally, which means swarm. The swarm, I should say, word swarm comes from a word that means hum. So when you talk about the swarm, you're talking about the humming. You're talking about a vibration, a tonal vibration, which is the symphony of the universe, the symphony of life. We're going to use the word hum, use the word oneness, just one. And you hold this throughout, and I'll suggest some thoughts that become a part of your consciousness. So just get still for a moment. Let ourselves experience the energy, the force, the creativity of this humming, this swarming of consciousness. In the beginning, God, Bereshith Elohim, the ground of being, the foundation of life, the immanence of mind, the activity of God. And building on this, let there be light. Let there be enlightenment. Let there be an awareness in which we see from this consciousness, this feeling of light. Let there be firmament. Let the faith factor come in view. The ability to see not as things are, but as they can be, to see possibilities. And let the dry land appear. The imaging of the I-imaging process. This idea that forms in consciousness, something that I plan to do. Then let there be two great lights, the sun and the moon, indicating the understanding and the will. The feeling of, yes, I know what to do, I know how to do it, I know how to go about it. And the persistence and the determination and the will to go forward. Then let there be swarms of supportive and developmental ideas. As we hum now, we see this humming as a swarming of God consciousness, filling our mind with ideas, suggestions, supportive and developmental thoughts. And into this consciousness comes a tremendous conviction. That which I need, that which I desire, that which I seek to do is now unfolding through me, and I'm on the way. And I praise God for this. One mind, one intelligence, one integrating process, one God consciousness, one beautiful divine self. One. And let this humming fade out into nothingness as you run out of breath. The backdrop is set. The humming of the universal rhythm and melody and divine process remains as a part of your consciousness. And your mind moves constantly in a creative way to unfold your good continuously. And we give thanks for the truth that makes us free. So be it.